In the NBA, fiscal duties and trading of players are very important. Although some teams use their drafted players to get to the NBA Finals, others make use of free agencies and trades. Some of these trades have been outstanding. Luka Doncic and the Mavericks, Kevin Durant to the Warriors, and King James to the Lakers are examples of ballers that have been acquired from trades and sent their teams to the big stage. Well, not all trade-acquired players give the best performances. Some of them are major flops. To avoid spoilers, let's look at some of the worst transfers in the history of the NBA market. Andre Roberson, 3 years, $30 million. Andre Roberson's deal wasn't a terrible one for the Thunder in 2017. He had secured a $30 million deal with Orlando, and at the time, he was one of the best defenders in the league. Unfortunately, he never got the chance to make this point during his time with the Thunder. Roberson barely played. He was out because of a ruptured left patella tendon, which made him spend most of his time on the sideline. He spent 3 years at Thunder with only 46 appearances. Chris Bosh, 5 years, $118 million. Together with Dwayne Wade and LeBron, Bosh took the Heat to the championship for 4 years in a row. And after LeBron's trade to the Lakers in 2014, the Heat didn't want to lose any more golden talent. So they looked to lock up a 5-year deal with Bosh, totaling a whopping $118 million contract. At the touch of pen to paper, the deal looked perfect. But the uncertainty of the future had a different story. Bosh was out for the following 2 years due to injuries, and shortly after, he was forced to retire because of blood clot complications he faced. He only ended up playing 97 games over his 5-year deal. Gilbert Arenas, 6 years, $111 million. 2004 to 2007 was Arenas' stellar period. He averaged 27.7 points per game during this time and was in the All-Star game in 3 seasons. After his terrible injury spell between 2007 and 2008, he was in the final year of his contract. Regardless of his inactivity, he was still pleasant in the eyes of other teams, but the Wizards were not ready to let him go. They brought out the big bucks to keep Arenas, but that was a terrible mistake. The injury spell was still uncoupled with his infamous firearm incident. Arenas only played 55 games in 2 seasons with the Wizards before being traded to Orlando before the end of his contract. Joakim Noah, 4 years, $72.6 million. From 2009 to 2014, Noah had an average of 11.5 points, 10.8 rebounds, and 3.4 blocks per game. He was a fan favorite, and his game was very interesting to watch. He was in the All-Star game in both 2013 and 2014. He was with the pin that placed the Bulls in a perennial playoff place. But in 2017, he was beginning to decline, and everyone in the NBA was aware of this. Regardless, the New York Knicks went on with a massive $72.6 million deal to pair him with his former teammate, Derrick Rose. The contract crashed immediately. He began to battle with both a knee and shoulder injury and only played for 40 minutes in the 2017-2018 season. He and the Knicks parted only after just 2 years. Ben Wallace, 4 years, $60 million. It was clear that big money was going to come in for Wallace, and unfortunately, the Bulls won the bidding. Ben was not a man known for a lot of points. He was a rebound machine, a wonderful defender, and pretty injury resistant. In the 2001-2002 season, he was the top on the rebound and block list, with the averages of 13 and 3.5 respectively. He was in the All-Star game for 4 seasons before becoming free agent in 2006. The Bulls believed that 32-year-old Big Ben still had a little in the tank, but boy were they wrong. He went downhill quick. His rebounds, points, and assists in his first season were the worst his career had ever seen. His numbers went down by 20%, and he didn't even get to complete his second season before they traded him out of there. Timothy Mozgov and Luol Deng, 4 years, $136 million. After Kobe's retirement, the Lakers got relieved from his massive contract. With ease and budget surplus, they decided to throw cash into the big ocean of free agency. They went for Mozgov and Deng. And boy, were those horrible choices. Mozgov had a stellar time at the Cavaliers, and he led them to victory in the NBA Finals, but the Lakers decided to gamble on that deal. He struggled terribly his whole time in LA, playing only 54 games in 1 season, which was his last, and he got traded right after his first season. Amare Stoudemire, 5 years, $99.7 million. After a year into Stoudemire's deal, the Knicks would have believed they had done it and had gotten their money's worth. Before we go on, why haven't you still hit that subscribe button? We have a lot more to offer. Now back to the sad story of Amare. All was going on perfectly with his New York contract. 23.5 points per game, 8.2 rebounds, all through 78 games. He got named to the All-Star game for the 6th time, and he was voted into the All-NBA second team for the 5th time. Then, it all went down. Battling with the death of his brother and a disc bulging in his back, his stats began to plummet. In the 2013-14 season, he averaged 11.9 points and 4.9 rebounds, and the Knicks just couldn't take it anymore, and they terminated his contract in the middle of his 4th year. Rashard Lewis, 6 years, $118 million. Today, some still believe some sort of sorcery was used in Rashard's mega deal at the Magic. You see what I did there? To start off with, Rashard was not really a star player. He was a good scorer, but unlike Amari Stoudemire, Ben Wallace, and other big names, he went to an All-Star game once in his 9 years in Seattle. He never went to an All-NBA game or held a top position in the NBA. He was just an above-average player. Even at Orlando, he still declined. Rashard went from an average of 18.2 to 17.7 and gave the Magic no other choice but to ship him off to Washington. To make matters worse, his contract was backloaded. After his first year, Rashard's contract increased from $14.88 million to $16.45 and then to $18.87 million by the 3rd year. In the 2010-11 season, only Kobe Bryant was paid more than Rashard, and this was daylight robbery. Chandler Parsons, 4 years, $94 million. Chandler Parsons sealed a crucial role while at Houston and Dallas, but for an average player, no one expected the heavy $94 million pumped in by the Grizzlies, which made him the 15th highest paid player in the 16-17 season. Over the subsequent 3 years, he had an increase of about $1 million a year in salary. Due to his knee injuries, he played 70 games over his last 2 seasons in Memphis and became a regular bench warmer for the team. He later got traded to the Hawks in 2019. And for the final terrible contract in the NBA, we're not going to talk about one player, but the terrible contracts and trades by Isaiah Thomas during his time as the Knicks coach. The super point guard and Hall of Famer Isaiah Thomas was the coach of the Knicks from 2006 until 2008. During his time in charge, he slowly depleted the club and had a terrible habit of trading away draft players. 3 major failed deals got him out of his position: Eddie Curry, Jared Jeffries, and Jerome James. Eddie Curry signed a 6-year deal for $60 million. To get the deal done, Isaiah traded for drafted players. That's just crazy. And to be honest, Curry's start at the Knicks was not a bad one. He played 81 games and led the team scoring in 2006-2007, but during his final 3 seasons, he only appeared in 10 games and then got traded after. He then moved on to gamble on Jared and Jerome for 5 years and $30 million each. Thomas used over 20% of the team's salary cap to have the deal completed. And to cut the long story brief, James did not play from day 1 and Jeffries produced an appalling 4.3 points per game. Thomas used the money enough to get the championships on worthless gambles. Yes, those deals were completely worthless. Well, this brings us to the end of the video.